Hey folks, good morning. Heading over to get some more gold. It's the day after the New York State Gold Prospectors Association event that I put together, but that gold's still calling my name. I tell you what, I go to bed thinking about gold, I wake up thinking about gold. It's just gold, gold, gold. Alright, I just want to stop here real quick and explain how the gold and why the gold is down in the area that we're going to go work. Now you can see here there's higher ground here. And it's kind of like bumpy like this, but it comes around, and then over in here you can see that it just drops off here and right there. That's a channel for the water that was melting off the glaciers. The water was all ponded up in this area. It's actually part of a glacial lake. I believe it was Lake Iroquois. And there is a spot over here you can view from the other side where the water started flowing over here, but what happened is the glaciers sat here for a while and they came through, and then they were melting and coming through and melting, and as they pushed they kind of left this moraine right here, this hump of moraine, and as they melted and formed this lake in here, they had to find a way out. So eventually they found some loose material and the water tore butt down through this valley here, and this is all gravels in here. This is all built of gravels. The main valley is down there, and there's actually an escarpment, and I'll show you on a map, where the glaciers came up against it and pushed, and a lot of the forest wasn't able to get all the way over there, so it came up over the sides of the escarpment, and this is where we are now. So as it was melting, like I was saying, the water was just building up in here and building up in here, and finally it found some loose material where it could get through there, and it came down through all those gravels and all the gold and deposited it down in the valley that we're working, if that makes sense. Special little area right here. Here's the other side of it. The channel was right through there. You see it? Channel over there. And there used to be one over here where it flowed off. It began to flow off. Pretty cool, huh? Stay tuned. On part 2, I give a little better explanation of the geology of the area and how it happened. Alright, we made it down to the creek. Now we usually dig over there against the wall. Let me zoom in. Usually right against the bedrock, we'll dig in there and get a little bits of gold there. Let me zoom back out. The water, when it comes down through there during a big flood, it's coming right through, and the slack water is kind of dumping off in here. You can see how the material changes, kind of where the sunlight is to the shadow. See, it's all smaller in there, and then it kind of gets bigger in there. And when that water is forced around that corner during really high water, when the gold is actually moving well, it's going to push back on this concrete wall here, so the force is going to come in, but the rolling water is going to kind of keep it back that way, and then this wall is kind of keeping it out too. So I'm thinking maybe right in this area here. We're going to give it a try right in here. See what happens. Might be good, might be bad. We'll find out. Alright, I kind of chose this area right in here. It's humped up just a few inches more than the rest. That kind of catches my eye. You can't tell on film, but so the first thing we'll do is remove some of these rocks out of here. We don't want to run those through the classifier, so just poke around and scratch a bunch of rocks out first. Alright, we got half a bucket. Let's set that sluice up. I think we can stab it right in that little narrow right there. Get it running okay. But what I'm finding is my shovel down there, there's a piece of flat stone. Maybe it's bedrock. I don't think it is. I don't think the bedrock is going to be that shallow, but maybe it is. And if it is, we might be in luck here. You see this other big flat one there? See it? Another one right there that's kind of down there. It's kind of tough digging in here, but that could be a good thing. Let's go set the sluice up, run this bucket, and see what we get. Alright, we got the sluice set up. She's running pretty good. A tad bit slow, but a lot of times a tad bit slow is just okay. I didn't think we had any gold in here at first, and I went back down to the hole and filled the bucket up with water to classify. And I looked in here. We already got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 little specks in there. I'm sure that you're not going to be able to see them. I'll try to point a couple of them out. Where's my finger? right down in there, another one right there. I don't think you're going to be able to see those, but maybe. Alright, let's keep digging in that spot. That's looking pretty good. Wow. Alright. Now for anybody that's new to prospecting, it's okay if you're still digging down, reach in there, wash those rocks off, toss them out. That dirt's still going to be in the hole. Don't worry so much about, oh, I might lose a little piece here and there. Chances are you're not, and if you do, it ain't going to be much. Don't spend too much time doing that. The trick of all this is moving as much material as you can. You're going to have a little bit of loss. Don't worry about that little bit of loss. Work on getting material through your box, and it's easier to do when these rocks aren't in your hole. Alright, we pushed 2 more half buckets through there, through the sluice. I'm only seeing a couple more little specks in there. This is not looking the best. I thought maybe the goal would be a little bigger once we got down there, but it's not looking so. We're going to take 1 more bucket out of this hole, and if it's not looking good, we're going to move up to about where the tripod is. Right where those rocks are dumping right there, those larger rocks. We'll move out just a little bit and start digging there. Alright, 1 more bucket out of here, see what it says. I did see another flake in there. There's one right off the end of my finger right there. You see it? Alright. Not a bad little flake. I almost thought I saw a piece down in the VDR too, but I'm not sure. Let's run this bucket through and see what it says. Nothing new in the box. Let's try a few buckets from right in here. See what it says. And if we don't get anything there, we'll go down around where our old hole was, try to empty it out a little bit and continue on with that one. But first, like I said, let's try it right here. Alright, we moved up there, got a half bucket out of there, and look at this, we already got a pretty good flake. Nice size flake. Right, let's see if I can point at it for you. You can see it right there, see it? Nice size flake. Second scoop out of the bucket. Alright, let's keep running. Alright, bucket number 2 out of this spot. This one I think might be a little better. It's a little more sticky down in there. Some clay that wasn't quite clay, just kind of runny clay, if you know what I mean. Let's go through it through the box and see what it says. Let's see if we can see that flaky gold this far away. Tell me when you can see it. I can see it already. See it right there? Nice flake. Piece of lead up there. Alright. Run this next bucket. A couple scoops out of there and I see some more lead. Piece of lead right there and then a piece of bird shot by that little piece of gold. Looking good. Alright, that's going to be the last bucket. Let me grab the scoop here and I'm just going to scoop my way on that bedrock, throw it in the bucket, try to get everything off the bottom, and then we'll throw it through the sluice. Alright, got the last bucket through the box. We'll do the usual, let her clean out on her own a little bit, have a look at it and see what gold we got. Alright, good times, man, good times. Alright, got my hole down there pretty much filled in, just a few more small ones on top. Let me show you the gold. That's a nice flake we got there, bigger flake. See it there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I pulled it back one more time. There was 4 or 5 little flakes in there, but all this lead that's in there, you can see that bigger piece up there, shot strewn all the way through it. I always just throw that in the bucket. We take it home and extract it later. Clean up the environment, right? Okay, got everything all pretty much packed up. Time to go. I'll see you on the next one. Next time we'll go someplace else. I do like digging here. It's really pretty, except for the concrete wall that's behind me. I just enjoy being right here. But next time we'll go someplace else, alright? I'm going to fill this hole in a little bit and get out of here. See you on the next one. Not sure what we'll do, but we'll do something. Probably gold prospecting, but you never know. And as always, and until then, have fun! Let's pretend that this is central New York, right? The eastern mountains over here that split Vermont and New York. The upper Appalachians are over here. The Adirondacks would be up here. Lake Ontario, a little bit of PA right here, Ohio, and then Pennsylvania down here, right? New York City would be down here somewhere, okay? Long Island. So this area was made of a very fine particulates, very fine material that came off from the mountains to the east and the Adirondacks as they eroded into fine material. There used to be an inland sea that covered the area, and all those materials would deposit on the bottom, and they'd build up and build up and build up over time in different geological events and build layers in there, and they'd stack right up, right? And I got that represented here in all these pieces of paper. See a whole bunch of them there. So that's central New York right there, made up of all sedimentary stone, right? Now, the Appalachians were formed at the same time there was an inland sea here. There was a sea and then there wasn't. It all depended on the way that Africa came into contact with the continent and it pulled away to change things in here. So Africa came in and pushed into North America several times. But on one of the last ones, what it did, as it built the Appalachians up in more rugged landscape, kind of more vertical, there was uplift in central New York. Let me grab a hold of it here, get down to the bottom paper. But what happened, there was a little bit of uplift, but the north uplifted more than the south. So I'm over exaggerating here. I'm lifting it way up just to show you that the north was higher than the south, right? So at the end there was a regional dip going to the south. Now as waters came down as in form of springs and came down as rains, they would collect and they would build streams that would flow down to the south because everything dipped that way. So you had little stream channels that were forming and they'd get bigger and bigger over with erosion, but not overly big. Now when everything got lifted up more toward the north, it caused the face of all this strata, all these different layers, remember the layers, to be more exposed on that front edge. And erosion, also weathering, caused them to be more exposed. So eventually they'd be more like this. See how they're kind of split? So imagine that's the face of all those areas, right? Had streams running off. But the more they uplift, the more erosion that can happen. So let's say we had a stream that flowed down through there like so, and it had all of its trunks, all these side streams. So you kind of had a valley going down through there. Let's put another one over here, and it had little side streams flowing into it from both ways. And there'd be a point here where they'd flow one way and they'd flow the other. You know, they might be even different down here like so. Okay? Now, so this would cause a little bit of a valley. And let's bring it all the way up to the very edge where this stone is, the edge of that strata, the very front leading edge of that. Now, the front edge of that is where the escarpments would be made. As this would flow down over the front of this, like I said, there wasn't a lot of erosional force because the waters could just flow down through there without obstruction. But on the north end, it was more steep, so it could cause more erosion. It could pluck material off there easier. And as time went by, it would build these small valleys up through here. The further time went on, the further back it would work. You see that? Now this is where glaciers come into play. We'll do another one over here. Okay, we got a small valley going back in there like such, right? So now this is the front of our escarpment, because as these little creeks flowed down off here and wore down through there, it would cut this further back, further and further and further down to a certain layer that was more resilient. So that erosion process, it would be deepest here and shallower as we come up through, right? So it would leave this escarpment front on here. And this wasn't irregular due to this erosional process. It wasn't regular like the front of this paper. It might be kind of like this, you know, depending on these little creeks that would flow in there. And everything above there, this was still a flat plane that dipped to the south, right? So all these little creeks that would be the same kind of here could flow against here, but they wouldn't penetrate here. So these two, when they formed here and joined, they would either run to the west or to the east, right? Got it? All right. Hopefully you can follow along. Let me move this up in the camera view a little better, I think. Okay, now the area that we were working, and this whole area, then the glaciers came in, right? And as they came across these escarpments, and let's say there was another escarpment up here that was caused because of the same erosional effects. Say this is the front of an escarpment. Of course, it's not regular. It's, you know, undulating across the face of it, the steepness of it, cutting back just like this, right? So as the glaciers came in, they would hit these escarpments, and they would be forced to get into these other valleys. And let's put another valley on this escarpment. So the tongue of glaciers would form, the more dominant tongues, and they were able to push through these valleys. And as they pushed all the way through, that's what made the through valley. A through valley is a valley that cut through all the escarpments and flowed all the way down through the state where the drainage was only headed south and there was no more escarpments. Does that make sense? Hopefully. So we got through valleys, and all these through valleys, let's say there's one here too, right? And these through valleys would be the Finger Lakes, where the basin was formed, where the glacier could cut out deeper, and it would create these big basins, and all these waters from all over here were able to fill these basins. As the glaciers receded, they would melt and they would dump material, right? And usually in these escarpments, in these through valleys especially, there would be a point where the water could not go south like it used to. A lot of the streams and rivers around here would flow south, but they've been taken over and they flow north now. And whenever the area in between a north and a south flowing stream is called a call, C-U-L. But that's not the topic of today. I'm getting away from myself. Let's get back to what the video is about. So we got these through valleys, like I point out in the video. I point down to where the through valley is. Then I mentioned that we had this other lobe of the glacier. As these were pushing through here and it hit this escarpment, it was easier for the glacier to kick up over the side sometimes and follow one of these little streams, like one of these little streams that I pointed out here. Can you see that? It would flow down into this pre-glacial stream. So it would be forced to find other ways out, and it would flow out these other streams. So you have the main valley, the through valley, and then you get these over-eroded side valleys. And what I mean by over-eroded, it wasn't due to the natural erosion of just rainwaters and springs. It was over-widened, over-deepened by a tongue of the glacier. Now here's the main tongue that would come through here, and then we'd get a side tongue of the glacier, if you will. And the main body of the glacier would be here. And it was hitting this escarpment, and the main tongues would go through, right? Okay. Now as these glaciers receded, they would melt, right? And all the waters would be flowing off here. And at a point where they met the gravels that they left, when the glaciers melted fast, they would dump a lot of material and they would build moraines. Now, as they melted past those moraines, the water couldn't get over there as easily, so they were melting off more and more, so the waters would get ponded in here. Let's put another through valley down through here, okay? Now, I mentioned Glacial Lake Iroquois, which did encompass the whole area, but that was a little bit later on to the geology that we're talking about in this particular little side valley. This was actually is this the earlier stages of this area to pond up and create a glacial lake. It was called Glacial Lake Ithaca because Ithaca was in like kind of the biggest little town city for this area, so that's what they named it. For let me put this other in another way. The area that glacial lake encompassed, the biggest town that we have in that area now is Ithaca, so they named it Glacial Lake Ithaca. Later on, as it melted more and more area would open up, and that glacial lake would get a different name the bigger it got, all the way up to Lake Iroquois, which Lake Iroquois eventually flowed out the Mohawk and drained almost everything. But back to where we are here. So we got Glacial Lake Ithaca in here, right? Well, as this side tongue of the glacier off the main glacier, the side tongue here pushed in, it pushed that material in that I'm showing in the video. It's kind of mounted like that, and there's bigger hills here because of these side streams that would erode down, and this was eroding, like I said. So it would leave a hill in between on these plateaus. There'd be hills in here. See what I mean? Hills. So on the right hand side in the video, which would be the south end, we got this hill here. So this mound of gravel, is this tongue of the glacier pushed up here, remained there before it started melting off, so it still remains. And as the water from Glacial Lake Ithaca ponded up, it would find ways to exit here. And in the video I mentioned there's a couple spots in this that are kind of like small flows that flowed over, but eventually it found an area over here. Imagine that it was flat at one time. It found an area over here that it could erode through more and cut down through more, so then we end up with the valley that I'm showing in the video. And that's how that all came to be. The force of the glaciers, first the uplift, the regional dip from the north to the south, which caused this erosion, which caused more erosion this way, which created these valleys that the glaciers could come through and pick their way through there easier, but not as easy enough to carve it right through. Some smaller tongues of the glacier would find side valleys from these creeks that were formed when this was still a flat plateau but dipped to the south. And it only pushed so far with that material before it receded its last time. And all these receded, the water built up and it had to find a way out, and it found the easiest spot through right there. And that's what carried the water, that carried the gold out. And that was quite a force back in the day. The area that we're working is quite a cut down through the valley. If you'll see in the video how steep the wall is there. There was a lot of water that drained out through here, and therefore it carried more gold, and it carried all that water from this way flowed to the east down to this through valley. The water on this side of that flows to the west down to this through valley. So all that water from all that meltwater off that glacier carried a lot more water and material down here, and that's why we find more gold in here. Now in these other creeks that were up on this plateau that regionally dipped to the south, relatively flat, remember, these ones, by the time that the glacier cut through this area, it had enough strength to push right through. It didn't make a lot of other tongues of the glacier, just a couple of them, and I showed that in a different video with the drumlins that I showed in one of the videos. So therefore, these small valleys don't carry the gold down the other side. So that's one tip in prospecting in central New York. If you can find the main tongues of the glacier, then these side tongues that penetrated and a lot of that meltwater carried down off into the other through valley to the east or even to the west, that might be a spot where you might be able to pick up more gold. There you go. Hopefully you guys can understand that. I understand it in my mind, but I'm not sure if I spit the words out correctly. So hopefully you do, and thanks for watching. In loving memory of one of my best friends, he was one great man. Jeff Gill, you'll always be remembered. It'll never be the same without you. Goonies forever, my friend. Goonies forever. I love you, brother. I'll see you on the flip side.